What if one of the most iconic royal births in modern history wasn't real? For years, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have fiercely guarded the details surrounding the birth of their son, Archie. The official story has always been framed as a deeply private, deeply personal moment, one they claimed was protected from tradition, protocol, and public pressure. But new questions are surfacing, and this time, they aren't coming from faceless internet trolls or royal conspiracy forums. They're coming from verified sources, medical experts, and a growing chorus of insiders demanding answers. At the center of this firestorm, Candace Owens, never one to hold back, and now accusing Meghan of orchestrating a misleading and medically implausible narrative surrounding her pregnancy. And she's not alone. From conflicting press statements to suspicious hospital timelines, piece by piece, the fairy tale begins to unravel. What once looked like privacy now reads like secrecy. What was praised as grace under pressure now feels meticulously curated. And what was allegedly true might not be at all. Because if even one thread in their story doesn't hold up, we're not just facing a PR problem, we're staring down a complete dismantling of the public's trust in Harry and Meghan. And the most shocking part? The inconsistencies aren't buried in rumor. They're printed in Harry's own memoir. On paper, Meghan's delivery sounded impressive, even empowering. According to Harry's memoir Spare, she gave birth at London's exclusive Portland hospital, had not one but 2 epidurals during labor, and was discharged just hours later, already home and resting with their newborn. It was the sort of narrative that played perfectly into the couple's signature persona, resilient, in control, and untouched by royal convention. But the moment medical professionals started reviewing that story, the illusion began to crack. The concept of receiving 2 epidurals mid-labor immediately raised alarm bells. Epidurals aren't pills, they're invasive spinal procedures that involve threading a catheter near the spine to deliver continuous pain relief. In most cases, one is carefully administered and closely managed throughout labor. Replacing it midway is not only extremely rare, it's risky, complex, and usually avoided unless medically necessary. Why go through such a complicated, dangerous step, only to also claim a smooth, rapid recovery? That's where red flag number 2 appears. Harry insists Meghan was home within hours, a timeline that flies directly in the face of standard postnatal care. Laboring mothers, especially those who've undergone epidural procedures, are monitored for a minimum of 24 hours in most hospitals. Physicians check for nerve complications, blood pressure drops, internal bleeding, not to mention newborn exams and paperwork. Leaving in under 3 hours is practically unheard of, even under ideal conditions. Now layer in the third problem, geography. Portland Hospital sits in central London. Harry and Meghan were living at Frogmore Cottage in Windsor, a journey that can take well over an hour with London traffic, especially late at night. If Meghan was truly discharged that quickly, passed all monitoring, bundled her newborn, signed off on everything, got in the car, and made it home in record time, then either London traffic had a miraculous freeze, or something about the timeline simply doesn't add up. If the medical details raised eyebrows, the press timeline lit the fuse. Royal births aren't just family moments, they're coordinated public spectacles with centuries of tradition behind them. When a royal baby arrives, protocol dictates that the palace informs the monarch first, followed by an official statement, and then a carefully coordinated media release. But when it came to Archie's birth, that system abruptly collapsed, and what filled the silence was contradiction. Meghan gave at least 3 different explanations for why the press wasn't informed in the usual way. In one version, it was about protecting her privacy. In another, it was due to unexpected complications. Then came a third story that contradicted both. The palace itself seemed caught off guard, feeding mixed messages to royal correspondents. Some reporters were told Meghan was in labor, hours after Archie had already been born. Others received completely outdated information, as if the lines of communication had gone dark. This wasn't a minor delay. It was a public breakdown in one of the most rehearsed royal rituals in existence. Even journalists who regularly defend the crown were left confused, and when those loyal to royal PR raise questions, something's clearly off. And here's the chilling part. Buckingham Palace doesn't break protocol by accident. Every detail is timed, reviewed, and approved, often down to the minute. The Queen being informed first. The press embargo times. The order in which statements are delivered. It's all baked into the monarchy's DNA as a living brand. So when all of that disappeared during Meghan's delivery, speculation didn't just rise, it exploded. Was the confusion a genuine desire for privacy? Or was it the first sign that the official story couldn't withstand public scrutiny? If telling the truth was the goal, why bury it under conflicting versions of reality? For years, speculation about Meghan's pregnancies hovered in the background, a topic too taboo for mainstream media, too controversial for royals to entertain. But then Candace Owens stepped in. Unfiltered and unapologetic, she took what was once whispered and dragged it into the spotlight. Her words weren't cautious. They were direct, bold, accusatory, and for many, uncomfortably accurate. Owens dissected Meghan's pregnancy story with surgical precision, pointing out glaring contradictions in Harry's memoir and brushing aside the palace's carefully laid PR strategy. She questioned the epidurals. She questioned the discharge. She questioned the silence from the hospital. And above all, she questioned why a couple obsessed with controlling the media narrative had spun 3 totally different stories about what should have been the most straightforward event of their lives. Was it trauma? Or was it manipulation? According to Owens, the inconsistencies weren't accidental. They were part of a strategy. A curated version of motherhood designed to make Meghan look like a strong, private, modern royal. But the cracks in that image, she argued, reveal something far less inspiring. A web of intentional misdirection meant to protect not the family, but a lie. And just like that, the story changed. It wasn't just royal gossip anymore. It was a public confrontation. Suddenly, this wasn't about Meghan being misunderstood. It was about whether she ever told the truth in the first place. And Candace Owens made sure millions of people began asking the same hard question. If Meghan lied about how she had her baby, what else might she be hiding? If Meghan's carefully rehearsed image is slipping, it's not because of strangers picking apart gossip blogs, it's because of Harry himself. In Spare, his best-selling memoir intended to set the record straight, he unintentionally triggers the very backlash he was likely trying to avoid. With one nostalgic, supposedly heartfelt account of Archie's birth, he cracks the story wide open. Harry describes Meghan's labor in vivid detail: 2 epidurals, late-night cravings, gourmet hospital meals, and even a secret elevator to protect their privacy, all wrapped up in a timeline so snug it could be mistaken for a Netflix script. But when real hospital staff, insiders, and seasoned Londoners read his account, they didn't nod in agreement. They raised eyebrows. Staff at Portland Hospital, speaking anonymously, questioned the very details Harry shared. One insider said the so-called secret elevator doesn't exist as described. The high-end facility does have private wings, but nothing remotely resembling a royal getaway shaft. Another employee claimed that Meghan's cravings, cited in the memoir as a 2 a.m. gourmet order, didn't line up with what was actually being served that night. And let's be clear, this isn't some budget clinic. Portland is known for first-class care and discretion. Even still, the recollections don't match. And then comes the biggest gap of all, the timeline. With 2 epidurals, a premature discharge, a newborn in tow, press to avoid, security to coordinate, and a return trip to Frogmore Cottage. Harry claims they were settled at home within hours. It's a sequence that's not just logistically improbable, it's medically implausible. This wasn't some harmless mistake. It was presented as fact in a memoir sold globally and hailed as a deeply personal truth. Yet the truth, as it turns out, might be something very different. When a royal changes a detail in a speech, it's called messaging. But when a memoir twists real events, knowingly or not, people stop calling it storytelling and start calling it cover-up. At first glance, the inconsistencies in Meghan and Harry's story might seem like misinformation, maybe even harmless exaggeration. But when you start lining them up, one after another, from the press confusion to medical red flags and now memoir contradictions, a pattern begins to emerge. Not one born from chaos, but from control. Because this isn't just a timeline problem. It's a narrative management strategy. A deliberate reshaping of events to craft a version of the truth that best fits their public brand. Meghan and Harry weren't just telling a birth story. They were building the foundation of their post-royal identity. A new image, authentic, modern, relatable. But ironically, that image now stands on details many believe were intentionally manipulated. Why say 2 epidurals when the medical consensus says that's dangerously uncommon? Why rush a discharge, knowing hospital protocols would contradict it? Why include royal escape elevators, gourmet meals, and dramatic pregnancy complications if the very staff who were there can't back any of it up? The simplest answer is image control. The darker one? A carefully plotted PR construction, with far more at stake than a hospital bill. Some media critics have argued that Meghan's birthing narrative was meant to draw both sympathy and awe. The glamorous woman who gave birth her way, on her terms, far from royal scrutiny. But when that story began to collapse, the fallback became privacy. We don't owe you details. Only now, with each contradiction parsed under a microscope, the privacy shield is starting to look a lot like a smokescreen. And here's the kicker. If this was all just a PR move, it backfired spectacularly. Because instead of silencing rumors, it gave skeptics more ammunition. Instead of protecting their legacy, it's created a new controversy, one that doesn't fade with time. It grows with every uncovered detail. By now, the inconsistencies aren't just inconvenient, they're impossible to ignore. This isn't about 2 epidurals anymore. It's not about press releases, secret elevators, or undocumented discharge timelines. It's about credibility and the creeping realization that the version of events Harry and Meghan sold to the world doesn't hold up under pressure. And when credibility cracks, trust shatters. From Meghan's own shifting accounts to Harry's memoir gaps and Candace Owens fanning the flames with uncomfortable truths, what started as whispers has erupted into open suspicion. If Meghan and Harry were willing to alter the story of something as personal and sacred as the birth of their child, what wouldn't they curate? And more importantly, why? To protect privacy? To preserve power? Or to manipulate public perception to keep their narrative and revenue intact? Each polished photo, each emotionally charged anecdote, each headline that used to evoke sympathy, now comes with an asterisk. Every micromanaged moment feels rehearsed. Every official statement feels off. And what's worse, the more they push back, the more people dig. Because the world isn't questioning a birth certificate anymore, they're questioning a brand. When your brand is built on authenticity, on being the real ones who escaped the palace machine, and the cracks begin to show, there's no PR team on earth that can put that back together. People don't forget when their trust is broken. And in the wake of this controversy, Harry and Meghan may learn the hardest lesson in public life. Once the audience stops believing you, everything becomes a performance.